Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah and welcome to Finding Me at the ITV Networks. Today, the continuation of the interview that I had last week with Nina Mdwaba, and we're speaking about very many issues, but it's wonderful to get the insight from young people in South Africa, young people who are able to articulate their experiences, but more importantly, I think, have the ability to start critiquing it, not for the sake of critiquing it, but because you want to make a better society, a better world. And part of that is recognizing your own agency, recognizing that you need to do something, that you have the potential to do something, and that you need to start holding yourself accountable and others around you. After all, it is about humanity. It is not just about being South African or about having a particular privilege. It is about building a better society. So I want to welcome Nina again, and Nina is going to start with another spoken word piece for us that we can reflect on, I think, and thereafter perhaps extend the conversation, I'm sure, which is going to go well beyond the amount of time I have allocated. So thank you very much again, Nina, for this. And let's hear, I mean, you have such a beautiful smile and such a friendly face, and then you come out with all of these huge words and articulations that are so intense and so thought-provoking that one wonders, like, how do you, that's another paradox. What is coming out from inside of you and what is external, I think. But let me give you the opportunity to let us reflect on the words that you have to share with us.
I'll share the poem and then I'll give you a response to what you were saying. So this one's called Words and Poetry, and this one was written about just empty promises that governments make, and Black Lives Matter in the sense that, you know, people of color still get the harshest of punishments in society. So, people like to hear nice words. I often think how we would be much worse off without them. Imagine a life of broken, unstroked egos that couldn't survive without them. In REM, we remember poetry, soothing words that bring us peace as we sleep. Poetry provides a rested state to state everything you want to hear in rhyming symphonies. Your words speak to me like psalms, like the ones that go on and on, and on, like that hook to the song that you just can't forget the words to. Forget the meaningless words, but how meaningless are they if they truly hook you? When I pulled your arm to walk out of this daze, you told me you were listening to the words in that speech, to exactly what they say. These words you claim hand on heart you're moved by. It's hard to believe that's true when I haven't seen the slightest twinkle in your eye. I imagine a day where we're all so simply mundane. From day to day, words are exactly the same, and art doesn't exist when pleasantries like hello and how are you don't move or shift minds. Because pleasantries go out the window when bigots get voted into presidencies and employ backwards, messed up policies that only aim to protect the 1%. Can't you see, First World, you're governed by wranglers of white supremacy and high society's hypocrisy? It's crazy how you never seem to see or learn in the sea of genetically conditioned tendencies to just not care as long as it doesn't affect you.
Well, that was powerful. And in actual fact, what you just recited was perhaps my entire honors class. I mean, I've been teaching them about why South Africa is a white supremacist state, about the racial issues, the inequality, populist leaders, and I think you cover all of that in just, you know, a minute or two, which is phenomenal. And you've raised so many issues. So, I mean, to come to this realization, the first realization, of course, is that we have a problem with leadership in South Africa. And as you were speaking, I was thinking of another student of mine whom only last night we were sitting and going over a paper of his, and he wanted to comment on President Cyril Ramaphosa's speech, which he made just 2 days ago. And he concludes this speech with invoking South Africans to do the Jerusalem dance. And he says, like, what nonsense is this? I mean, why is the president, you know, bringing people into fairy tales and into stories, etc., when it brings nothing, it changes nothing about their lifestyle. It's like capturing, you know, like the Americans, they say our people completely captured in entertainment that they don't even know what's happening really in the world around them. Yeah, and so this is the same.
It's another form of propaganda, really. It's just propaganda.
Exactly. And you brainwash the people into believing that everything will be fine through dance and song. You know, like the Romans say, take them to the circus, so, and feed them cake and stuff like that.
Let them eat cake, you know. It's like,
Yeah, so and then you obfuscate the realities, the real issues, and this is exactly what I picked up in your poem. So when you start to think about all of these issues, how do you feel about South Africa? Okay, you're in the UK now. Would you come back? Do you feel there's a place for you here that you need to give back to this country, that there's a future here? I mean, considering also that it's not a bed of roses out there, especially where you are.
Mm. Well, there's so much, honestly. I wish we had like hours to have this conversation. I think, South Africa is very special to me. It's a place where like I really do call it home. I often find it very frustrating actually when I meet South Africans who have traveled abroad and are like, oh, I don't want to go back because of A, B, C, D. I'm just like, your loss. And so I have 100% thought of coming back home because, like I was speaking about in the last kind of segment of the interview, I really do feel like there's a lot of healing that needs to happen in South Africa. I think there's a lot of racial healing that needs to happen in South Africa in order for racial empowerment to occur in South Africa. And I think that once people are empowered and educated, I think that obviously is like somewhat of a dream because it's a utopia to hope that everyone can have that, but at least trying to work towards that is something that I want to be a part of. I definitely want to see the syllabus of every school in South Africa decolonized before I die. I want to be part of writing textbooks. I want to be a part of educating young girls. I really do feel like there's a lot of work that I can do, but I think, and I had this conversation with one of my friends, which I think is very important, is I haven't been home for about 7 years, not obviously in visiting. I visit every year at least twice. I've not lived in South Africa really for 7 years. And if you think about how much changes in that frame of time in someone's kind of lifetime, right? But also if you think of culturally what the landscape looks like is so different. So I think I definitely would have to be very careful on how I kind of assert myself or bring myself into that landscape. I think I would want to work obviously hand in hand with people who are already kind of at the forefront of the communities, working with these young people, working with mental health care if it really exists, because to be honest, like I said, the stigma is still so big that and maybe unaffordable, inaccessible. So there isn't exactly this understanding that like mental health is such a big part of why we are not to say it's the only reason, but why we're so not empowered, why we're so like oppressed, because we don't understand really our own worth in the landscape as Black people, as people of color. I would want to come home, yes, but I'm also afraid to come home, if I'm being honest. Because I also think that the way that I've been able to conduct myself as an adult here, with the voice I have and the words I speak, and what I do think can be, and I hate to say it, but more progressive than the political climate that we have back home, I do worry about how I'm going to be met. And obviously that's very much just kind of me assuming that I'm going to be this big bad person that people are going to hear from, which I think I will. But I do worry that, that every effort is going to be kind of pushed against because of the fact that maybe because I moved, or because I'm out of touch, or for whatever reason. And I don't mean on the ground level, I mean from like a government level. I think it's still so patriarchal, our government system as well, that I do think that like women are dismissed so easily, that if there's things that I would like to say or like to do, I think it's going to be like I have to work 3 times, 10 times as hard as a man to get that across, which I'm up for the challenge. But I just think, I do worry. I'm apprehensive. I'm apprehensive about what changes.
Okay, so we have to go to a break, and we're going to come back. But I fully understand, and I think I feel more than understand. I actually feel your fear. It is a very difficult time that we are in. As many can say, it's an epic time, and we really wonder if there are any lessons that are going to be taken from our past, from COVID-19, by those who lead us to make a difference. But, whether they have the political will, whether they have the vision, that for me is still questionable, because as you say, it's so patriarchal. I say it's a government of dinosaurs. But we're going to come back, and I want to raise the whole question about art of the oppressed with you. We'll see you after the break. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the final segment of Finding Me on the ITV Networks with my special guest, Nina, and we're speaking about the whole issue of art of the oppressed. As South Africans, I think we recognize the fact, and I specifically learned this during Christmas Fall, when many of the protesters said that in South Africa we protest through song. I think we protest through art, and we make our pain more visible through our creativity. So, Nina, with that, I think you will, I'm sure that would resonate with you, because these are issues that you are raising through your own creative expression. And so very quickly, I want to cover these two questions with you. Do you think that there isn't enough of opportunity for creative expression in contemporary South African education system, and that expression, I mean in terms of art, music, poetry, etc., in our schools especially, to allow children to start thinking through these processes through a different means rather than simply just the normal formal education system? That's the one. And secondly, if we look at our history, and I'm sure you must have begun to encounter this, the Maria Makebas of the world, etc., they protested, they brought social issues, human issues to the forefront through the music that they made, through their fine arts, creative expression. All of these Black artists in South Africa went into the international stage and actually told the story through a creative means, a means other than just this, ordinary formal speaking, but which touched and resonated with people all over the world. Do you then believe that this kind of expression is an archive that tells the issues of social injustice, of racism, etc., and that should be considered as part of the Black archive, as a knowledge base for people to tap into, to start examining the real issues, rather than having someone always write about us, but we can see what these artists have done and then let their voices speak to tell the story, and that becomes our theory, our foundation, our framework.
100%. And yes, chills the whole way you were speaking, because this is literally the epitome of, I guess, it's funny when you mention, like, the fact that all these different mediums of performance and music was a way to kind of portray and share the South African story. It really ties me into my roots as a South African performance artist. When people ask me, first and foremost, like, where do you align yourself as an artist? I'm like, South African. I'm like, I am South. Like, I don't want anyone to make the mistake. I don't want you to misunderstand. I don't want you to put any other kind of identity on me, because I think there is so much to be said about the fact that as South Africans, we have found a way, and the most beautiful and powerful ways to share our narrative and to fight against a system of oppression that was obviously just terrible. And when you really read about the black box theater and how that became, and where the Market Theater now is, how that really came into, and the Joburg Theater, and how those really came into fruition, it was literally because Black artists and Black performers were tired. They were sick and tired of being told they can't do this, and they can't make art, and they can't perform, and they can't. And so I think what artists really do in society is reflect society back, really. And for me, that's really been at the forefront of, I guess, what I'm doing without consciously thinking about it, of just being like, you know what, I'm actually just tired of a lot. I'm tired of all of this, and I'm not putting up with it. And so just so you know what's happening in the news, I sometimes think of myself as a news forecast. I'm like, oh, did you know this is the news you're probably not going to get told by the BBC? So here's the news that now you're going to hear, thinking that you're coming to some lovely little performance. And really, it's education. It's an education system in itself. And I think that when you're talking about South Africa and like bringing this to the young people, I think again it feels like a catch-22, and it's so frustrating because there's a part of me that's like, yes, I would love to see that, and again, love to be part of the process and the team of people who put this together for young kids. But then I'm also so weary of the fact of how much money is not given and funding is not given for these things in school. And again, so it's a thing where I always think of like this kind of almost like tripartite of like the government, the people, and then those who are most vulnerable. And the government, unfortunately, if they're not willing to help the people who want to help the most vulnerable because of funding or because of whatever, make excuses, and obviously a corrupt government that puts funding everywhere other than where it should be put, we end up having these issues. So it's really difficult to really say like whether or not it's plausible or feasible, because it's hard to really figure out where our government is putting their funds. Like, I think that's what confuses many South Africans. And because I personally am confused by that, I feel like I would have to find a different way to fund that. Like, it's something I would love to do, because yes, I think kids need to find a way to express themselves, which is so much of the work I do as a drama therapist. As a drama therapist, we don't really use language. It's an oblique approach, so everything is done through metaphor and storytelling and myth and dance and singing, and so those are ways that human beings inherently can express themselves, and has been seen for years and years to happen in centuries. But yeah, it would be great if that was something that could be implemented in South African schools. I think it should. I think it should be a necessity for that to be part of South African schools.
It certainly should be. And with all of this that you say, I'm just also in a sense feeling a bit frustrated, because I feel there's so much potential out there. People like yourself who have the potential to do better, to elevate the society, to contribute in a way, and yet these potentials are squandered. We have to lose people like you to other nations of the world, rather than getting the best of South Africans back. In that way, also in coming back to the youth, and I see your passion is with them, do you feel that the youth in South Africa are beginning to change their perspective? Because you've done some work on Black Lives Matter, you've done some protest work on Fees Must Fall. Do you feel that the youth are tapping into music that resonates with them? As your dad told me, that time when he was an activist, he pushed the argument locally Zleke, to get it back to understanding Black music, Black culture, Black traditions. Looking from the outside, as you said, you haven't been home for so long, it might be a bit of a disconnect, but instead of being obsessed with the imperialist, with the culture of the imperialist, following white music, European music, etc., do you see a turn, especially now with Fees Must Fall, Roads Must Fall, Black Lives Matter, a shift in the mindset towards more Black artists, Black music, indigenous languages, speaking or making, being creative in your own language?
Again, I might be slightly out of touch, but I think because I do go home often, and I still listen a lot to, especially music. I guess music's the easiest thing to really pinpoint, because I guess unless you're going to like the theater regularly, or you're not really seeing kind of visual arts as much, or like or performance arts as much. But like music wise, it's interesting, because I think when my dad was still in the music industry, when there was the TKZs and and the Ringos and the Libamatosas and Boom Shaka, like, and the Tandiswa Mazwai, like that generation was so proud. Like, and Brenda Fassie, was kind of like, she was like pop princess, so she could kind of fall into the kind of westernized. She could code switch very nicely, I think. But I think what I've realized, with the Born Frees, especially the ones who end up making music within kind of the Santon, which is very much kind of northern whatever society. I've never really taken a liking to it, if I'm being honest. And like, if there's ever any artists who see me say this, it's gonna be really awkward, because I know some of them. But I just think that it's so American hip hop. When I think of hip hop, actually, yeah, maybe let's create a distinction. When I think of hip hop, I think it's very Americanized, some of it. what I have started to do, I guess, for myself is really to look more into the the artists who do use vernac, which I think are, if you've ever listened to a rapper called Questa, he used to make a lot of music in English, and I don't know what changed, but he basically just decided one day, he's like, no, making music in Zulu. It is beautiful. It is, and it feels South African, and Casper Nyovest as well, when he's not speaking English, I think he's also great. There's an artist, but that's the funny thing as well, is I don't really listen to that generation. I listen to my parents' generation of music, like Simbi Wedana and like Thandiso Mazwai, Lebo Matos. Like those are the people I still listen to because they feel like home. And I wonder if there needs to be a communication maybe between the newcomers in the industry and like the old comers, and being like, hey, how do we create a South African sound again? Because I think other than like gom and amapiano, which is very like, it's great if you want to go dancing. I don't know if I hear a lot of South African sounding music other than that. You get like very proud Durbanites who have their kind of gom and everything's like, these big kind of drums, and it's very, very characteristic. So it's amazing to hear because it still feels like home. But that reminds me of a club, like a club night, rather than me sitting and having a beautiful, I don't know, day out somewhere. No, I just think that.
Sorry, then I get what you're saying. It's almost as if there's a disconnect in the communication or in the telling of the story, and so it's like two different South Africas, and it's not a continuation, but it comes back everything to what you were saying. It's that trauma and the memory. There is no coherence in the continuation of that particular memory. Nina, we're right at the end, and I want you to tell us your story about Black Lives Must Matter or Fees Must Fall through your spoken word, and we'd like to go out with that. So thank you very much for your time and for sharing these thoughts.
Thank you. I wrote this poem after the passing of George Floyd, which I think can be localized to South Africa if people really just think about it. Okay. It's called I'll Believe It When I See It. I'm tired. All the Black women in me are tired. Words I find myself saying as if to replace the standard, hey, yeah, I'm okay, just working through another day. I witness each Black face slathered across the screen, accompanied by a soul-ripping scene of yet another person who looks like me, disappearing as their last breath is taken. In my DNA lies a very special chromosome of disbelief and disorientation, patiently waiting for the day when it's all different. I'm afraid to turn around and leave, to turn over another leaf, ready to forgive, but I can't look away and leave my fate in the hands of people who have scorned me one too many times. Sentencing me to a life of knowing what I know, but turning the other cheek. The way I think of it is like leaving my newborn baby in the hands of a stranger. Someone who to me hasn't proved that they won't cause more danger than good, who won't take my offspring's life and change it before he's even had the chance to live it, to give it all he's got, because you see, I've already seen this scene on my screen. One Black square posted only 1 week before to mean absolutely nothing the next. I'm weak in my disbelief and total lack of faith in white society to be the change that I need to see. Yes, all the Black woman in me are tired. So I retired into hiding, regressing into old habits I inhabit naturally as my only known means of safety. Numbness and ambivalence scream out to me. It's been a long freaking week. Each year I discover new ways to mourn the death of a Black father or pray for a Black child not yet born. Yes, my ego cries out, maybe you should try again. But sadly, by then I've used up every false start and every fake smile I've worn for 24 years. Tears fall harder and faster. It's compulsive, this ever-flowing stream, red like the blood flowing, ripping away at the seams of a community drowning in resilience. It's been a week. I feel really weak and I am tired. Still need a week. Completely in disbelief. They claim this revolution will be televised. Yeah? Well, I'll believe it when I see it.
Thank you very much, Nina. Thank you for this. And I think for all of us, we need to think. It is time for revolution. It is time that we show and manifest our resilience. It is time that we overcome. But more importantly, can we get through the fatigue? Yes, we are all tired. Fi amanillah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.